Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on smartphone warranties and consumer right to repair issues, what every phone owner should know. My name is Linda Williams, and I am a community outreach and training manager with Consumer Action. And on behalf of the entire staff at Consumer Action, welcome. It is great that we all can meet today to discuss smartphone warranties and right to repair issues and understand why your right to repair your smartphone and other electronics is so important, and how getting your smartphone fixed is a pocketbook issue, one that can have a negative impact on households that depend on their smartphones to connect to the internet. Think about it. Smartphones have been an essential feature of our lives for years now. We use these phones to stay in contact via text, to find out of the way locations of stores via GPS, and have face-to-face FaceTime conversations with friends and family members. I know I enjoy mine with my grandkids. A recent study found that the average American, yeah, you, check their phones 80 times daily. Do you know that equals once every 12 minutes? And over 30% of those surveys stated that they feel regular anxiety when they are separated from their phones for even a minute. And over 60% reported occasional stress when they are separated from their phones. 4 in 10 Americans stated that they would prefer to lose their voice for a day rather than be without their phone for 24 hours. So what happens when your smartphone craps out? What happens when you drop that phone, leave it in a hot car, or take it swimming with you, or the darn thing just won't take a charge? What options do you have when dealing with a broken smartphone? Can you take it to your local fix-it shop without voiding your warranty? Do you know what smartphone warranties cover and what they don't cover? Do you know the difference between a warranty and insurance? And if your phone is covered by a warranty, do you know how to file a claim? And what about consumer protections? Are there anything at the federal level or the state level that you can rely on? Well, we have three experts with us today to provide you with the answer to those questions and more. Katie Daffan is here. Katie is an assistant director in the FTC's Division of Marketing Practices. She works with consumer protection laws and on right to repair issues. She is also leading her agency's work on the Every Community Initiative. You will receive a copy of the report on that initiative tomorrow. But one key example of the work that's being done through this initiative is a collaboration between the FTC and legal service providers, legal aid agencies on consumer protection issues that face low-income consumers. Kaveh Waddell is here. Kaveh is a deputy editor at the Digital Labs at Consumer Reports. He is also the author of People Want to Get Phones and Appliances Fixed, but often they can't. It was published in the February 2022 issue of Consumer Reports. You will receive a link to that great article tomorrow as well. Nandita Sampath is here. Nandita is a policy analyst with Consumer Reports. She is also the author of Fair Repair Act fact sheet that and has been quoted in several articles, including an article about New York being the first state to pass an electronic right to repair law. A link to that fact sheet and the article will be in the materials tomorrow. We are bringing the fire today, people. So take a last sip of your coffee, take out your pen and your paper, and strap in because it's going to be a blast. But before I get too excited, I need to go over a few housekeeping items and update you with what's happening at Consumer Action. This is a 90-minute webinar. You will receive a link to the PowerPoint slides used by our guest professionals today, no later than tomorrow afternoon, if not sooner. We love hearing from you, so at the end of all presentations, Outreach Trainer Nelson Santiago, he's going to facilitate a question and answer segment. This is where we want to hear from you. So if you have any questions for our guests, please use the question function to ask your question. Don't let them leave here now without answering your question. At the end of the training, you will receive a short survey about today's webinar. So we value your feedback as we work diligently to improve our service to you. So if you have a comment, a suggestion, or dare I say a compliment, we would love to hear from you. So please complete the survey. Now, as a bonus for attending today, you will receive a certificate of completion. AFC professionals, you will receive 1.5 CEUs for attending the day, and the code word to claim that credit will be with the PowerPoint and other materials tomorrow afternoon. So now, before I go any further, I would like to take a moment to thank our sponsor and update you on what's happening at Consumer Action. This webinar is presented with a grant from the Rose Foundation and for communities and environments. So I want to give a shout out to the Rose Foundation and to thank them for their support. We are having a birthday. Consumer Action is celebrating 51 years in the business on November the 16th. Now, in honor of our special day, our special event, we are hosting a virtual convening webinar on eradicating barriers to housing and credit. Yep, that's right. It's going to be a good one. We have a great lineup of speakers. Gabe Del Rio, President and CEO of Home Ownership Council of America, would be there. Attorney Kevin S. Raven, the Director of Litigation at Three Rivers Legal Services, will be there. Mike Kaprowski, the National Campaign Director for the National Low Income Housing Coalition, will be in the house. Mia Ives Rubelee, the Director of Disability Justice Initiative for the Center for American Progress, will be there. And rounding up our star lineup is Ms. Chi Chi Wu, Staff Attorney with the National Consumer Law Center. The invite is out. If you don't have it, hit me up and I will make sure you get a VIP invitation. You can't miss this event. Now, what do we do at Consumer Action? As stated on the screen, through education and advocacy, we fight for strong consumer rights and policies that promote fairness for all consumers, but especially for underrepresented communities nationwide. At Consumer Action, we are extremely proud of all of our work, but we are especially proud of our COVID-19 educational project. So when you're on our website, click on that little burgundy link in the middle and you will land on our COVID-19 project page. There you will find a ton of resources that you can share with your clients to help them navigate the COVID-19 financial crisis that unfortunately we're still in the middle of. Now let me tell you about a new project that we just completed. We've completed 2 multilingual, easy to read guides for consumers about smartphone warranties, including information on extended warranty, smartphone insurance, right to repair issues, and federal consumer warranty law, and whether or not there's any states that are offering any protection, and how to file the claim. So when you're on our website, please download both guides and make them available to your clients so that they will understand what's going on. Now, let me go over the roadmap so you'll know where we're headed today. At Consumer Action, we believe in making learning fun. So we open up each and every training by testing your knowledge on the training topic with our most popular game, How Much Do You Know? Today, we have 3 true or false questions related to smartphone warranties and consumer right to repair issues. Following the game, I will introduce you to our guest professionals in the order they will be presenting. Question and answer segment led by Nelson Santiago will follow all presentations. I will come back, tell you how you can donate $5, $10, $15 to Consumer Action and wrap up. Okay, so let the game begin. This is how the game is played. We have three true or false questions. I will read the questions and you will use the question function on the right-hand side to select whether that question is true or false. I will close the poll, look at the results, and I'll tell you whether you're right or whether you're wrong. So let's roll out the first question, please. Having your smartphone repaired by anyone other than an authorized dealer will void your phone's warranty. Is that true or is that false? Having your smartphone repaired by anyone other than an authorized dealer will void your phone's warranty. Is that true or false? Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Okay. Let's close the poll and take a look at the results. Wow, 65% of you think that's true. 35% says it's false. 65%, I'm glad you were in the house today because that is false. If you're ever turned away by a company for a warranty repair because you got third-party parts in your phone or any other product, you should know that that is forbidden by law. A company cannot refuse to fix something you bought from them just because you took it to a third-party shop. We will hear more about this from our presenters coming up. You're doing great. You're doing really, really good. Okay, let's go to this. We have 2 more questions left. Let's go to the next question. Okay, true or false? Before you buy smartphone insurance, you should check whether your existing insurance policies or credit card offer protection. Is that true or is that false? Before you buy smartphone insurance, you should check whether your existing insurance policies or credit card offer protection. Okay, let's close the poll and take a look at the results. Okay, so 95% of you think that this is a true statement. 5% said the statement is just totally way out there false. Well, actually, it is true. Before buying smartphone or gadget insurance, check whether you have enough financial protection through your existing insurance policy or the credit card that you use to purchase the item with. If you have homeowners or renters insurance, electronic devices are likely covered under the personal property section of your policy. That means that your stuff is usually covered if it's stolen or lost in the fire. Now they tell me. There may be some limitations, so you should read your policy very carefully. You are doing fantastic. Come on, we have one question left. 100% correct. We're going to get it 100% correct. Let's go to the last question, please. 1/4 of consumers with a broken phone set out to repair it, but ended up replacing it due to the high cost of repairs. Is that true or is that false? 1/4 of consumers with a broken phone set out to repair it, but ended up replacing it due to the high cost of repairs. Is that true or false? Okay, let's close the poll and take a look at the results. 88% believes that this is a true statement. 12% say, no, it's a totally false statement. Actually, according to an article that was written by one of our guest speakers that you're going to hear from shortly, the statement is true. It is true. So you will hear more about that in Mr. Waddell's presentation about his survey and the results that he found. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for playing the game. And we do the game every day just to give you a little bit more information about the topic. So now let's get ready for our featured presentation. Let me introduce our guest speakers to you. Kathleen Daffan is an assistant director of the FTC Division of Marketing Practices, where she works on right to repair issues and fraud matters, as well as the agency's Every Community Initiative, as I told you earlier. She also litigates fraud cases and has served as an attorney advisor to the former FTC chair, Edith Ramirez. She holds a bachelor's BA degree from Princeton University and a JD from Columbia School of Law. Welcome, Katie. Our next speaker is Kaveh Waddell. He is an investigative journalist at Consumer Reports, where he covers algorithm bias. And please look that up. It's really an interesting topic. Misinformation and technology enabled abuse of power. Previously, he reported on artificial intelligence, robotics, and other emerging technologies at Axios, and covered surveillance, privacy and technology policy at the Atlantic and National Journal. He's also been a foreign correspondent in Beirut, Lebanon. He holds a bachelor's degree in international politics and economics from Middlebury College. Welcome to Consumer Act. Nandita Sampath is a policy analyst in Consumer Reports San Francisco office. Her area of focus is also on algorithmic bias and accountability issues, helping Consumer Reports shape its platform into the emergency area of policy. Prior to joining Consumer Reports, she was an engineer in the Silicon Valley. She has previously worked at tech policy groups such as Center for Democracy, Technology ID 2020, and UC Berkeley Policy Lab. She holds a BS in Electronic Engineering and Computer Science from UC Berkeley and a Master of Public Policy from UC Berkeley's Goldman School of Public Policy. Welcome. Now I am going to turn the presentation over to Katie. Put your Nandita.
Hi, Linda. I'm here. I see you're getting the slide set up. Thank you.
Great. So you can take it away.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you so much. And we can go right on to the next slide so that everyone can see my plan for what I'm going to cover today. First, just a little bit about me. I am a former legal services lawyer, but I've been at the Federal Trade Commission for 11 years. And our main bread and butter work in the Division of Marketing Practices, where I work, is shutting down scams, which is an extremely fun job to do. We go into court and try to get assets frozen so that money can be returned to consumers. And so I do have to say that compared with all of our war stories here about bringing down scammers, the topic of smartphone warranties is a little bit drier than what I'm used to presenting about, to the point where my husband offered to write jokes for me. But I will say you all owe me some amount of goodwill here because I said no to his jokes. And I'm just planning to do my best here. It is a really important topic. And also, Kaveh did mention maybe a song and dance later from Consumer Reports. So you should stick around for that, if nothing else. The reason I say this is such an important topic is that, as we all know, for many people, a smartphone is an incredibly expensive purchase, far and above many of the other things that we have to buy in order to kind of survive our daily life in this day and age. And for so many of us, that smartphone is a lifeline to our jobs, to our family, and to so many aspects of who we are as people. And so Linda's questions from the beginning: what happens when something goes wrong? What happens when it breaks or is stolen? These are critical questions that come up for every single one of us. And so I'm so happy that Consumer Action is putting on this webinar, and I look forward to engaging with all of you. Please do put your questions in the Q&A as I'm going, and I look forward to some back and forth later. But I'll jump right in now. We can go to the next slide. Actually, before I jump in, let me say that I'm speaking on my own behalf, not speaking on behalf of the Commission or any of the commissioners. We always have to say that. So what is the Federal Trade Commission? Just very quickly, for those who aren't familiar with us, which is a lot of people. We're not a huge agency, but we do have a huge mission. We're the nation's consumer protection agency. And by consumer, that's very broad. We just mean anyone who interacts with businesses or pays for anything. We have very broad jurisdiction over almost the entire economy. And our mission there is huge. It's to stop unfair, deceptive, or fraudulent practices. And that includes everything from, privacy and data security to my own bread and butter work, which is fraud affecting all communities across the country, and a lot of issues in between. And how do we do our work? Law enforcement is one of our major tools. We have our own independent litigating authority, and we have a wonderfully broad statute, the FTC Act. We use that and many other rules to sue companies and people who break the law. But then education is also key. We alert people and businesses about the scams we're seeing, where they can get help, and also educate them about their rights and responsibilities. And in doing all of this work, it's incredibly important to build partnerships and coalitions, as Linda mentioned. And we don't just work with other law enforcement agencies at the state and local and federal levels, but we have a really organized initiative across the Bureau of Consumer Protection to try to form real meaningful partnerships with legal services organizations and community level groups so that we can hear what's going on in those communities where people might not know about us and report to us, and so that we can also help get the word out to those folks. And I work on that every day, so I'm really happy to answer questions if people have it about that side of our work. But for now, let's jump into the main topic of the day, which is warranties, and start out at the basic level about what they cover. So some people may think, and understandably, that warranties are pretty much all the same. And that's not the case. So we're going to go through some of the differences and some of the real nuances that you want to be aware of when you hear the word warranty. So smartphones, like other electronic devices, come with a manufacturer's warranty. And the typical length for a manufacturer's warranty is 1 year, but you can find them for as short as a few months or as long as 2 years. And one thing to know about the manufacturer's warranty is that if you buy or sell a used device and you're still within that warranty period from the initial purchase, then any remaining manufacturer's warranty goes with the phone. So if you bought a used phone and it was a 2022 model and you just bought it 6 months in after the original owner had it, then you would still be covered by that manufacturer's warranty. So on to the typical coverage. Warranties differ, but in general, they promise to repair, replace, or refund the purchase price of a phone that is found to have mechanical, electrical, or software defects. So this is really about defects. The important thing here is that the new device should come with a written warranty. That's sometimes called an express warranty. It will either be within the owner's manual or it could be separate. But if you'd like to read the warranty before deciding on a purchase, you can look for it online, or you can look for it where the product is sold, and you should be able to find it. And one reason to read the warranty before purchase is to find out some of these details I've been talking about. How long will it last? But also to learn about what remedies are available if something does go wrong. So if your phone needs to be replaced for some reason because there's a defect, are you going to get another new phone? Or what's more common is you would get a refurbished device that's supposed to, work well but not be brand new. There's also a difference in terms of some warranties you can turn your phone in locally to get it inspected and repairs, and others you have to ship it somewhere. And then if you have to ship it, are you going to be responsible for the shipping charges? Those kinds of details about manufacturer's warranties should all be laid out in the written warranty. And ideally, this is hard, but the best time to make decisions about, what kind of protection you need or want for a new smartphone is before you get to that point of checking out. And so with that, we can go to the next slide. And, this is a really key takeaway from my presentation is unfortunately what is not covered by manufacturers' warranties for phones. Warranties are not the same as insurance. And so that is something that, you can use to counsel people, because I think it can be a misunderstanding out there. And so warranties won't cover accidents. So to take some examples that I've either experienced or come close to in my life, your child drops your smartphone in the water, your child stomps on your smartphone, your child throws up on your smartphone. All of these are the kinds of accidents that may happen through no fault of my own, but can really threaten a smartphone and that the warranty would not cover. Then another category that isn't covered is abuse and neglect. So for example, accidentally leaving a phone out in the sun, or I think Linda mentioned a hot car. A manufacturer might consider that abuse or neglect of the phone and not allow the warranty to cover it. And then finally, loss and theft, which can happen to absolutely everyone and does happen to a lot of people. These are also not covered by warranties. The other thing to know is we talked about the time period of the warranties, typically a year. There's no coverage after that warranty expiration. But one thing that I wanted to note is that if some kind of defect does appear after a warranty expires, it makes sense to do a little research. You do not want to just assume, oh, it's been more than a year, I'm out of luck. Because sometimes when real defects arise after the fact, manufacturers will repair them. For example, if there's a known defect that's affecting many customers, then the manufacturers may agree to fix that defect. And so it's definitely worth looking into, even if you're past the expiration date of the manufacturer's warranty. And now let's go to the next slide. How to file a claim. And it may be, even though this isn't the most scintillating information here, that this may be the one thing people want to take away from my part of the presentation, because you know, it's very practical, and it's something that unfortunately we're probably all going to have to do at some point, which is to file a warranty claim, either about a smartphone or some other major product. And so here's the advice. Number one, ideally, you would keep receipts and warranty documents. However, I would not say to give up if you don't have your receipt, and certainly not to give up if you don't have your warranty, because you can hopefully find it online. But it can be easier if you keep those documents. Next, check the terms. So the next part of the process would be reading the warranty to find out what is the claims process. Is the issue that you're having likely to be covered by the warranty? What information or documentation might you be asked to provide in connection with the warranty claim? And then just any other details. You might find some nuggets in there that help you avoid having your claim rejected. And then to the next bullet, you want to be prepared to enter your device's serial number or IMEI number. This can often be found on the packaging, but of course, if you don't have the packaging anymore, another tip would be to look in the device's settings. So if you go to settings and then look under general or about in that kind of area, then you can hopefully find this number. And I wrote safeguard this information because you only want to provide it with verified legitimate parties. And with that, I'll just connect to, you know, a much bigger point that we always make at the FTC, which is that you never want to call a phone number that you got in an email, or click on a link that you got in an email or a text. Even if you think it looks like a legit email from a company you're doing business with, those things can be faked all too easily. And so our advice is, when you're making an important call to a company, you want to go and independently find the phone number for that company, you know, using your own web search, and rely on that, because unfortunately we have a lot of business imposters out there right now. And just like so many other types of personal information, even just your device serial number is not something that you want to be giving out to just anybody. Okay, so moving on from that, contact the manufacturer directly. Depending on the company, you may be able to start a claim online or by email, or there may be options in person or by phone. And one thing is, back up your phone. You know, consumers regularly back up their phones and then delete the data on their phones before bringing in the phone for a warranty, or actually any other type of repair. That's just a really good practice to keep yourself safe and to keep your personal information safe. And you know, if you have to ship the phone to the manufacturer or to a repair center, you should inquire. You may be provided a free shipping label. And some companies also offer loaners, so that you're not left with a device while yours is being evaluated and then either repaired or replaced. And so the question, when to report? The best way to avoid a hassle is to report the issue as soon as possible. One thing, you know, folks are more likely to be lenient when returns are made soon after the purchase. But here again, I want to make a similar point, which is, if some time has gone by, you know, even after the warranty's expired, like I said before, that does not mean that you should just give up. You can still contact the retailer and manufacturer. And like I said, some companies will honor a warranty after expiration if there's some kind of widespread problem. This is jumping forward a little bit to a consumer right type of comment, but if you do report a defect to a company during the warranty period, but you know, there's back and forth and ultimately the product isn't repaired properly, the company has to correct the problem, even if your warranty expires before the product is ultimately fixed. So in other words, a company can't just delay and do a poor repair in order to get out of the terms of the warranty. So moving right along to extended warranties and smartphone insurance, the next slide. This is a confusing topic and one that you may be able to help clients or people you work with understand better. So extended warranties, I'm going to start with that. What are they and what's typically covered? Depending on where you buy a device, an extended warranty could be through the manufacturer, like the Apple Care or other phone manufacturers have that, or through a wireless service carrier like Verizon or AT&T, or through the retailer, the store where you actually bought it, or a third party. So there's a lot of different extended warranties out there. And what they typically tend to provide is the same coverage as a manufacturer's warranty would provide, but just extend it out for a longer period, like an additional 1, 2, or 3 years. And generally they cover defects like manufacturer's warranties, although there may also be the option sometimes to purchase a plan that includes additional protection, like for accidental damage, loss, or theft. So that's extended warranties. They look a lot like a warranty, but just pushed out for more time. And you can buy them from multiple different types of entities. Then there's smartphone insurance. And it's a different thing. It is offered by many traditional insurers, as well as smaller companies that specialize in smartphone insurance products. And it covers things that are not covered under the warranty typically. So loss, theft, and accidental damage. But not every policy is the same. In fact, they vary widely. They don't all cover all of these types of claims. And so, one of the big takeaways here for me is that these can vary widely, the extended warranties and the smartphone insurance. So it's very important that if someone's considering this, they shop around and understand exactly what will be covered and what will be excluded. So, that could involve questions about the premium. How much is it? How often is it charged? Do you have to prepay or can you cancel at any time? Obviously, you want to know about what's covered and what isn't covered by the insurance product. You want to know about how much is the deductible, so the amount you have to pay out of pocket before the insurer pays, and that might vary by the premium amount. And the deductible could be different for different types of claims, like theft versus damage. You're going to want to know about the claims process, what documents might be required, and is there a limit on the number of claims, and when will claims be denied? And then also, if your claim is approved, what will happen? What will you receive and what steps will you have to go through? And so, as you could tell, these are really complicated products and require a lot of research before becoming involved in them, I would say personally. So going on to the next slide, we're going to get into some consumer rights related to smartphone warranties. And on this first slide, I'm going to cover some sort of odds and ends in terms of consumer rights. And then after this, I will get into the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act, which is a regulation and statute that we work with at the Federal Trade Commission. So in terms of, other consumer rights, states can establish their own warranty laws. So some states have stronger protections than federal law provides. And here my advice is the simplest thing possible, which is just do an online search for a state name plus warranty laws and see what the situation is in your particular state if you're interested. But it does vary quite widely. Then consumers can have different rights depending on the actual terms of the warranty they're concerned with, because the fine print of the warranty may tell you How do you contest the decision that was made under the warranty? How do you contest the whole warranty process? There's going to be information there about what are your rights if you disagree with a manufacturer's decisions. And then I also wanted to mention the Fair Credit Billing Act. Probably you've heard of chargebacks before, and this is the law governing chargebacks. Federal law allows you to seek a reversal of a credit card charge when there are certain types of problems with the items that you purchased using your credit card. And so this was probably most useful pretty soon after you buy a phone. If there's a problem with it and you can't get it worked out through the manufacturer or the retailer, then a chargeback right may be another option that you should consider. And that would mean contesting it through your actual credit card. So now we can move on to the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act. And this is where we're going to get close to that, that first question that Linda asked about whether taking your phone to an independent repair shop will avoid the warranty. And we're going to get there when we get down to the anti-tying provision bullet. But first, I want to give you some more basic provisions of the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act, which is the federal law that governs product warranties. And one important thing to know about this law is it does not actually require any business to provide a written warranty. But once a business decides to offer a written warranty on a consumer product, it has to comply with this act. And so one of the things that the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act requires is that manufacturers and sellers who do provide written warranties have to clearly disclose and describe the warranty terms in a single, clear, easily readable document. And this single document requirement applies to products that cost over $15. We recently had a lawsuit against Harley-Davidson, and part of what it involved was an allegation that the company failed to comply with this single document requirement because people were told to go to their dealership to get full details about the warranty. And so we alleged that that was a violation of this single document requirement, and really all the terms of the warranty should be laid clearly out in one place. So the second requirement here, warranties must be available before sale. This also applies for products over $15, and it requires that the warranty should be available where the product is sold so that consumers can read it before purchasing, which is so critical for consumers' ability to comparison shop if they're looking down the line to what warranty coverage is offered. And then another requirement about full versus limited warranties. So the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act requires that if a warranty is provided, the company providing it has to title the warranty either a full warranty or a limited warranty. And this applies for all products over $10. And you can find more about what these terms mean on our website, but basically the term full warranty is sort of a shorthand message to consumers that the coverage of this warranty meets the Act's standards as comprehensive warranty coverage. Whereas if you see limited warranty, then a consumer would know that the coverage provided here doesn't meet at least one of the standards in the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act. So now on to the anti-tying provision, which is, I would have to say, my personal favorite among the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act provisions. And it's a little in the weeds. So I'm going to tell you what it is and then give some examples. So this anti-tying provision prohibits statements or implications that the consumer of a warranted product must buy or use a particular product or service from a particular company, or else risk losing the warranty coverage. So, for example, a phone manufacturer can't require you to buy and use one of its own super special phone cases in order for the warranty to be valid, because then they would be conditioning their warranty on buying a particular product from them. And that is what the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act anti-tying provision prohibits. Also, as someone who's selling anything over $15, a printer, can't say that if you go to any unauthorized repair person to repair this printer, your warranty's void. And, you know, a smartphone seller should not say, if you get your screen repaired by an unauthorized repair person, your warranty's void. The anti-tying provision prohibits all of those warranty provisions. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, because I'm going to give you some examples of our law enforcement under that provision, and it really ties in with what we're going to cover in the rest of the presentation about the right to repair. But before we move on, I did want to say one more thing about the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act, which is this last bullet. So most provisions of the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act don't apply to extended warranties. And those are also sometimes called service contracts. Most of the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act is about the manufacturer's warranty that I talked about is typically for a year or so after the product purchase. But there is a term in the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act that talks about an extended warranty or service contract should be fully, clearly, and conspicuously disclosing its terms and conditions in simple and readily understood language. And so that provision, which is 15 U.S.C. 2306B, does touch on extended warranties and at least say that you have to clearly disclose all of the terms and conditions. Okay, so from there, let me, as promised, just move on and touch on some of our law enforcement under the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act. So we can go forward to the next slide. And this is just an image from one of our recent press releases. But basically, right now, the Federal Trade Commission is considering 3 proposed orders in cases under that anti-tying provision under the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act. And so we consider these right to repair cases. What does right to repair mean? It's a big umbrella term. And some of the questions that it raises are, if you buy a product, who decides how that product gets repaired? Are you allowed to fix the product? Do you own the product? Can you take it anywhere you want or not? And if not, why? I'm going to talk a bit more about the Federal Trade Commission's broad work on right to repair issues in just a moment. But these cases under the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act anti-tying provisions really implicated those same questions, because we accused the companies of violating the anti-tying provisions. So the companies were Harley-Davidson, Weber, the grill maker, and the maker of Westinghouse brand outdoor generators. And to give you an example of what the language is like, here I'll quote from the Federal Trade Commission's complaint against Weber. The commission alleges that the user manual and warranty for particular gas grills states, the use and or installation of parts on your Weber products that are not genuine Weber parts will void this warranty. And it says, and any damages that result hereby are not covered by this warranty. Now, interestingly, the second part of that statement is probably okay. Manufacturers are allowed to say, if you go to a repair shop and damage is caused to your product, that damage does not need to be covered by the warranty. However, the first part of the statement, that using or installing non-genuine parts will void the warranty, That is what the Federal Trade Commission alleged violated the anti-tying provisions of the Act. And so under the proposed orders that are currently pending before the Commission, the companies are required to do a number of things. First, they're prohibited from further violations of the Warranty Act and from telling consumers that their warranties will be void if they use third-party parts. If the companies violate these terms, the FTC will be able to seek civil penalties of more than $40,000 per violation in federal court. The other thing that the orders do is go a step further and require the companies to add specific language to their warranties that say something like, using third-party parts will not void this warranty, just to make it crystal clear. And then also the companies are all required under these proposed settlements to send and post notices informing customers that their warranties will remain in effect, even if they use or install third-party parts. So those are the cases, and I'm happy to talk more about them if anyone has questions. But now I'd like to just sort of come toward the end of my presentation by talking a bit more broadly about right to repair at the Federal Trade Commission. Because we have the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act and we have the anti-tying provision, and we have been active in enforcement there. However, what happens when you're well past a year after you purchase a product? Are companies allowed to do whatever they want to restrict your ability to repair that product yourself and to restrict your ability to buy third-party parts or to go to an independent repair person? When something isn't covered by the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act, what is the lay of the land? And so in 2021, the FTC, actually in 2020, the FTC held a big conference on the topic and solicited both comments and research on these topics. And then in May 2021, the agency issued a report, and it was voted out unanimously by a bipartisan commission. And it found that many manufacturers restrict independent repair in a number of different ways. So product designs, just making it impossible to take something apart because of the glue you use. Unavailability of parts and repair information. You can't find it anywhere, so nobody can repair it because it's a tightly held secret. Policies or statements that steer consumers to manufacturer networks. Implications that if you go somewhere else, bad things will probably happen. The application of patent rights and enforcement of trademarks. The disparagement of parts that are not made by the manufacturer. OEM here means original equipment manufacturer. So if you're saying those other parts made by other companies are worse than ours, or that independent repairs are not as safe, that would count as disparagement under that bullet. And then we also found that manufacturers sometimes restrict independent repair through software locks and firmware updates or end user license agreements, EULAs. So moving on to the next slide, in this report, we also found that unfortunately, the burden of repair restrictions may fall more heavily on communities of color and lower income communities. And I think my colleagues are going to talk a little bit more about that today, so I'll just leave it there for now, but it was very troubling finding. And we also went through in the report, what are manufacturers' explanations for these repair restrictions? And we categorized a number of them, including the desire to protect IP rights or to protect safety or to protect the security of data, a number of different things. But the report, the Nixing the Fix report, found that there is, quote, scant evidence to support manufacturers' justifications for repair restrictions. And so as a result of this report, and then there was a subsequent policy statement by the commission, you can see that this is an area of real interest for the agency. One of the things that the report directed us as staff to do is to work with any legislators who are trying to address this issue through legislation. And so one thing I wanted to mention here, which is actually an exciting development in this space, is that in New York, the legislature has passed a Digital Fair Repair Act, which is the nation's first general digital right to repair law. Now, let me say this has not been signed by the governor yet, so it's not in enforceable law yet, but it is worth mentioning, and it's very relevant here. The bill would mandate that manufacturers of digital electronic equipment or a part of the equipment sold in New York, that they have to provide independent repair providers with diagnostic and repair information and software and tools and parts, so that the mom and pop repair shop down the street can fix your stuff because they have the needed information and access to the parts they need to fix your stuff. And if you live in a rural part of the state, you might not have to drive hours and hours to a city to get to an authorized repairer. And if you just have the know-how to fix your own stuff, that you should be able to do that. So it is really an exciting development that I wanted to touch on. And now, just to close, I'm going to touch on some FTC resources, which I always love to do with a crowd like this one that we have today. I know that you work with so many people in your daily life, and there are many consumer messages that I think could be helpful to the people you're working with. And our resources are all available for free. There's no copyright. All we want to do is get the word out to people and make sure they're armed against, bad business practices and fraud. And so if you go to our site, consumer.ftc.gov, that's where you can get information about a variety of different consumer issues, everything from scams, money and credit, privacy and online security, and many other things. And like I said, share these, grab them and put your own markings on them, make them your own, use them in a blog post. You can get print materials if you want as well. And going on to the next slide, I had a screenshot up about how to stop unwanted calls on a cell phone. This one is how to protect your phone from hackers. And a very important one, with key advice. This is just the top of the article, but it goes on to say in detail how to lock your phone, how to update your software, how to back up your data, how to get help finding a lost phone. And once again, this is also available at consumer.ftc.gov, or in Spanish. All of these materials are also available, and you just go to consumidor.ftc.gov. And then you can stay updated and connected to the FTC. If we go to the next slide, you can see our consumer alert information. We issue alerts to help people stay up to date with the latest scams. And it's a lot of the newest thing that we're seeing in our reports, and it can give you material to talk about with the people you counsel. And if you subscribe to these alerts, you can use the up-to-date information to teach people how to spot and report, the newest, biggest scam coming up. And I just mentioned reporting, so let's go on to the next slide. We would love to hear from you and your clients about bad practices related to smartphones, and really to any other deceptive or unfair things you're seeing in the marketplace. So to report in English, you go to reportfraud.ftc.gov, and you can see the Spanish link down there at the bottom as well. And going to the next slide, this report that you file gives the FTC and also our other law enforcement agencies all around the country information to help identify and stop dishonest businesses. And then we also use the information to spot trends so that we can alert other people about how to avoid whatever's going on. So reporting here is a way to not only protect yourself, but also your community. And with that, we'll be at the last slide. And I just want to thank all of you for listening to this long presentation about smartphone warranties. And also encourage you, if you have any feedback or suggestions, please feel free to send me an email at my address there, kdaffan@ftc.gov. I look forward to talking through your questions later. And for now, I will turn it back to Linda.
Well, thank you, Katie, for that excellent presentation. Very informative. Now I'm going to turn it over to our next presenters. And I think you have Mr. Waddell, Mr. Nandita, I think you should have control. Yes, you have control of the screen.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Linda, and thank you, Katie, for the super informative presentation. I'm really excited to be here to talk to you a little bit about Consumer Reports work around repairability and the right to repair. Again, I'm Kaveh. I'm an investigative journalist at Consumer Reports. My work revolves around digital rights and sustainability, which means repairability is just right at the intersection of what I'm interested in. I'll start off and then I'll pass it to my colleague Nandita, who's a policy analyst for Consumer Reports, and her expertise is also in repairability. So I'll be starting out by talking about some findings from a Consumer Reports survey that we ran at the end of last year, and then Nandita will talk a little bit about policy and CR stances and advocacy. The title here is from an article that I wrote based on our survey results, and it just sort of gets straight to the heart of the matter. People want to fix their phones, but often they can't. Let's make sure, oh good, that works. The details, especially from that Nixing the Fix report from the FTC that Katie was talking about, just perfectly set up what we're going to be going through now. Some of the findings from that report, the restrictive design, the glued-in, really strapped down smartphone designs, statements that steer consumers away from independent repair. These are the very things that lead to the outcomes that we'll be discussing. So everything here that we're talking about is built on a nationally representative survey that Consumer Reports ran in November and December of 2021. We surveyed more than 2,000 adults in the United States. And so we've got a survey department that does these statistically representative surveys on all sorts of issues that matter to consumers. Here are four of the key findings from our survey, and I'll go through them one by one in the rest of the presentation here. We found that consumers really value repair when it comes to many product categories, including personal electronic devices like smartphones. But we found that relatively few people actually fix their phones. And we'll talk about what those numbers look like and why. We found that a lot of people are confused by warranties. In fact, we asked very much a version of the question that you all answered at the top of this presentation. And we found that a lot of people want stricter regulation, want stricter rules around what manufacturers can and can't do and should do around this. First, though, to set up. In the course of my reporting, I spoke with a man named Mario Andre. He's a 27-year-old animator in Atlanta. Pretty tech-savvy guy. He works in digital animation, young, big into smartphones. He's got a big following on social media. And so when his his Samsung phone's battery was starting to lose capacity, he figured, well, I can probably fix this. So he ordered a replacement online. And when it arrived, he pulled up an online tutorial and thought, well, this can't take terribly long. Then the video told him, well, you got to warm up the back of the phone, start melting the glue a little bit, then carefully, wedge open the back so that you can get to the battery. And he was like, whoa, okay, well, this is more than I bargained for, but I'll try. He had a heat gun. He used his heat gun. He tried to do just what the tutorial was saying, warm up the glue without hurting the electronics themselves. He ended up with a burn hole in his carpet and a phone that was still firmly shut. He ended up buying a new phone. And what he told me is, I didn't realize how complicated it was to just take off the back of my phone when it used to be so easy. I remember the first phone I had, I mean, we would pop open the back and just fiddle with the battery. It's like a fidgeting thing. It was just like so easy to take that out in the SIM card. And he said, snap it off and bam, replace your battery. That's how it used to be. So Mario Andre, he valued repairability. It didn't work out for him, and he isn't alone, as we found in our survey results. So here we're looking at the first of our four findings that consumers value repair. So we asked folks, we said, how important to you is repairability in each of the following categories? And we asked not just about smartphones or tablets, those went into the portable electronic devices category that I've highlighted here, but we also asked about vehicles, large and small home appliances, and entertainment electronics. So that's like, TVs, smart speakers, etc. Vehicles is interesting here. It's the top bar. It's sort of a control, right? It's like a pretty healthy repair market. People are dropping 10, 20, 30, 40 plus $1,000 on a car. They want to make sure that they can fix it when it stops working. If your car needed to be thrown out and a new one, you have to get a new one every time, like, the tire went flat, that would be insane. And so people have high expectations for repairability of cars. Then we looked down a few to portable electronic devices that again includes smartphones. 38% of people told us it's really important to them that their smartphones and portable electronics are replaceable. And another 39% said it's somewhat important to them. Combine those two, and you've got 77%, more than 3/4 of people who say it's important that their electronics are repairable, and that combination, in fact, is even more than large home appliances, which includes things like refrigerators, which can cost, I don't know, 10 plus, 20 plus times the amount that a new smartphone does. I'm a renter. I don't actually know how much refrigerators cost, but I think it's a lot. So this is clearly on people's minds, and it blows some of the lower categories out of the water. Things like small home appliances, like toasters. Like people just aren't in the habit of fixing those as much anymore. In part because it's really hard. Like a lot of stores that used to do vacuum repair or toaster repair or things like that have gone out of business, or they won't even work on a lot of models. We had a toaster breakdown in the last year, and because this is the thing that I report on and care about, I was like, well, let's see what it's like to try and get this toaster repaired. And I took it to what I'm pretty sure is the last store in San Francisco that actually fixes toasters. And he looked at me like I was crazy. He was like, no, just buy a new toaster. Don't you know they're $20 now? Which wasn't the point. I wanted to fix the one that I had, but I ended up having to get a new one. And this is not a result from our survey, but we think, and I think from some of my reporting, that some of the reasons that some of the importance measures here are lower for things like personal electronic devices or small home appliances is that people are just used to not being able to fix their phones. If people really felt like that was a viable option, they might value that characteristic more when they're deciding what smartphone to buy. It is, as Katie said, a very expensive purchase. It's a really large ticket purchase that a lot of people make. And so if it were clearer that, well, it is an option to get this fixed, then we might even see those numbers go up. When it comes to consumers valuing repair, those numbers that you were looking at, that was across our nationally representative sample. But if you break things down by race and ethnicity, you see some interesting variation. These numbers are looking only at people who said it's very important to them that a mobile device that they buy is repairable. And we see a 19 percentage point difference between the most concerned group, Black Americans, and the least concerned group, white Americans. So that's a pretty big spread. And then additionally, not seen on this slide, but we also found differences by income, which perhaps is less surprising, right? Someone who makes less than $30,000 a year was 14 percentage points more likely to say that mobile device repairability is very important to them compared to someone who makes more than $100,000 a year. That makes sense. It's an economic calculus. If you're making six figures, then maybe you already wanted to buy a new, the iPhone 14 or whatever. And so it's less important to you that you be able to fix it. If you make less than $30,000 a year, a large 3-digit number of dollars going out for a broken phone really hurts, and so it matters a lot to you. And then finally, when you stack, these two demographic slices, you see interactions. Again, on the slide, you see this gap, this nearly 20 percentage point gap between Black Americans and white Americans. It's an even wider gap when you look just at Black Americans and white Americans who make less than $30,000 a year. So striate by income and also by race and ethnicity, and you've got pretty big splits. That just tells you that this is an economic justice issue. It's a racial justice issue. It's something that doesn't matter equally and the burden doesn't fall equally on everybody affected by this problem. We'll move now to the second of our findings, that consumers can't get fixes easily. We found that 1 in 4 Americans, this was one of your test questions at the beginning, I think most people got this right, 1 in 4 Americans who had a smartphone stopped working on them in the last 5 years, that was the rate they were looking at, tried to get it fixed, but ended up replacing it. This was a shockingly high number for me, that a quarter of people who had a broken phone wanted to go out and fix it. They had that intention, but they were stymied and they had to replace it. So they probably ended up spending an order of magnitude more money on resolving the problem than they intended to. So we asked why. Why were you deterred or unable to fix the phone and you had to go out and replace it? And the 3 top reasons, we got a bunch of reasons back, but the 3 top reasons were it was too expensive to fix it. And you see this all the time, right? Anecdotally, people are always like, well, it would have cost me almost as much to fix the thing as it would have to go to the Apple Store or Best Buy or whatever and buy a new version. So why wouldn't I do that? People said it was too inconvenient. And that might be because they live in a place where a repair shop, whether authorized or manufacturer or an independent repair shop, isn't accessible. Or it might just be that there are too few shops around. They're busy. There's any number of reasons that a fix can be inconvenient. And then there's the people who are regular upgraders, want the shiny new thing, or they've been hanging on to the phone for 5 years, and when it breaks, it's that sign from God you've been looking for to get the shiny new iPhone, and great, off you go. We also found that the proportion of people who were actually able to go through and fix their phone when it broke was only 16%. Just 16% of people who had a phone break actually got it fixed the most recent time. That's a pretty low number. Maybe this sounds familiar to you all, given your work and your backgrounds, but I was surprised that it was such a low proportion of people who actually were able to fix their phone when they wanted to. So we asked those people. We asked those people who were able to fix their phones, where did you take your phone to get it fixed? And these numbers don't add up to 100% because people were able to say more than one thing. Maybe they tried several options. The plurality of people, 1/3 of people said they got it fixed or they went to go get it fixed at the store where they purchased it. So that seems to be people's defaults. 23% told us they went to the manufacturer. So that may or may not be where you bought it. 23% told us they went to an authorized repair shop, and 21% said they went to an independent repair shop. So it's pretty evenly split after this sort of leading answer that most people go to the store where they purchased it. Now, we don't know exactly why that is the main answer, but you might speculate based on some of the information that Katie was presenting before. Maybe people are still under warranty, and it makes sense, or it's easiest to go to the store where they purchased it, if that's where the warranty serviced. Or maybe people were under some mistaken impression that they had to do that. And we'll get back to that again in just a moment. And just for the briefest second to back up a little bit into the why it matters of all of this. Again, the cost. If you're looking at a fix, for something simple like a broken screen or a degraded battery. It could be as little as $60, $80, $120 at an independent repair shop. I called around a bunch of repair shops all over the country to get a sense, and there's a pretty consistent rates. And so if it's not if you don't have the newest phone where the independent repair shop may not yet have the tools or the know-how to fix it. But if you have like a reasonably old, like a 2-year-old phone, and it's just your kid stomped on the screen and you need that fixed, then usually it's high 2 digits, low 3 digits, versus hundreds of dollars for a new phone, even over $1,000 for a fancy new phone. That's an enormous split. And then there's the environmental impact. Every failed fix adds to the staggering amount of e-waste that we generate in the United States. Plus, it stokes demand for new devices that are built with rare natural resources and often with harmful labor practices. They have to be shipped usually across the Pacific Ocean. So it's just like an enormous cost that you might not even see in the sticker price to every new device that's purchased, especially when maybe the alternative was a fix. Let's go again at the sort of economic and racial justice angle here. So I heard from a lot of people during my reporting that this isn't just a dollar and cents issue, that it is an economic justice issue. Here I was speaking with Gary Bronner, who is the executive director of PCs for People Maryland. That's a nonprofit that repairs devices and makes them available to low-income Baltimoreans. The nonprofit serves mostly people of color in Baltimore. And he told me that the group has to do what it does because there's a lack of parts and guidance and manuals that people might be able to use to do the service at home. So they need to rely on an outside group to do this. And Mr. Bronner said this lack of repairability has an adverse impact on people's ability to be economically mobile. This is far more than convenience. This is about being able to build a life. A broken screen or a dead battery, of course, is a major inconvenience to anybody. But if you depend on your smartphone for internet access, it's a much, much more serious problem. And according to previous research that we did at Consumer Reports, the numbers of people who depend on smartphones for internet access are sort of unsurprisingly split by race, by ethnicity, and by income. Nationally, more Black American households than white or Hispanic households depend on smartphones for connecting to the internet at home. And Americans with a household income of less than $30,000 a year are over 2.5 times more likely than those making at least $100,000 a year to rely on smartphones for their only at-home internet access. So big splits there again. The pain of a hard-to-fix phone is not evenly spread at all. That's a theme here. I went too far. There we go. Our third finding: consumers are confused by warranties. You've heard this now several times throughout this webinar. We mentioned before that that fewer than a quarter of people who were able to fix their phones went to independent repair shops. That was an earlier finding from Consumer Reports research from our survey. So we asked them why. Why did they, or rather, we asked the people who didn't go to independent repair why they didn't. And they were able, again, to give us multiple options, which is why these numbers add up to way more than 100%. The top answer, I think it could void my manufacturer's warranty. We got 47, we got nearly half of people who said that. Now, I think in this group, no shame. I think we had an even larger number of people who had this impression that going to an independent repair shop could void your manufacturer's warranty. And again, to repeat the information from Katie's presentation, that is very rarely the case. Almost always, you aren't voiding your manufacturer's warranty by going to independent repair shops. And to void the warranty or to imply that the warranty would be void is not allowed. And so why do people think this? It could just be kind of a widespread misconception. It could also be that manufacturers sort of allow consumers to think this. They have something to gain from allowing consumers to think this. We don't have any data on personal device makers, but last year US PIRG did a study of appliance manufacturers, and the group found that 45 of the 50 appliance manufacturers they studied made a version of this misleading claim, that independent repair could void your manufacturer's warranty. So it would be interesting to see what the data is for personal device makers, for smartphone makers. I have no indication that it's more or less than that, but if there are those misleading claims, then that might suggest a reason that a lot of people think this. Among the next most popular reasons, other reasons that deterred consumers from using independent repair shops, a fear that they may not have access to genuine parts, or a fear that they may not be as familiar with a brand or experienced with a product as authorized repair or manufacturer repair, or even worries that it would be a safety hazard if they messed up the repair, that they could come home and get shocked or have it melt down, or who knows what, or even that they could break it or make the problem worse. As we'll get to in just a little bit, these are actually some things that right to repair legislation is trying to address. These perceptions aren't always incorrect. It's very true that independent repair shops have a lot of trouble getting access to genuine parts. That may not matter. That may not mean that it's a less long-lasting or a less high-quality repair, but the fact that that's a perception that people have that keeps them away from independent repair shops is informative here. And so some of the policy proposals that are floating around would actually make it easier for independent repairers to get those manuals and parts and tools that they would need to sort of potentially rival authorized repair or manufacturer repair in quality and speed and whatnot. So that's an interesting thing to look at through the policy lens. Our very last finding, and then I'll turn it over to Nandita to talk to you a little bit about policy and consumer report stances here. Our last finding is that people pretty overwhelmingly support rules to ease repairability, to make it easier for both people at home, people like Mario, or professionals, independent repair professionals, to fix phones. And again, that's something that many legislative proposals are trying to get at. So we asked, do you believe that manufacturers should be required to make available basic diagnostic information tools and replacement parts needed to make repairs? And we asked to two different groups. Should they be made available to independent shops and to people who own their products? To both questions, 3/4 or more than 3/4 of people said yes. I do believe that manufacturers should be required to make these things available. So that's a bit of a landslide. In a related finding that's not on this on the slide, we saw Americans think there's a lack of consumer choice for repairs. So that's directly related to this. Fewer than half of Americans told us that they think there are enough options for fixing their smartphones. So that's fewer than half. Compare again with vehicles, which was, like I said before, a bit of a control group. For vehicles, more than 3/4 of people said there's enough choice for fixing their cars, which again, it's an example of market working a little bit better. There's also more regulation there, such that like if you go to your neighborhood auto shop versus your authorized dealer, many people know that you might get much better deals. My consumer reports cars colleagues would be much better position to talk about this, but you can come out ahead by going to like a non-dealership repair shop, and there are certain ways that you can't be dinged for it, and so that's a bit of a model that could work for electronics repairability as well. Last thing I will mention is that some companies are sort of already responding to the increased pressure. So there are these legislative proposals that are floating around. There's just a lot more, I think, consumer awareness around this issue, and people having a sense that if they spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars on an item in order to feel like they actually own it, they want to be able to fix it. So in the face of that pressure, and also from policymakers, last year, Apple started making some parts and manuals available for the first time to independent repair shops and also to consumers like you and me. And so Consumer Reports have found some problems with that that program, and I can send around an article that a colleague wrote about that. But it is a step in a more open direction from a sort of historically, famously closed off company. Microsoft actually faced a shareholder resolution around repairability. And around that time, it said it's going to make some of its devices easier to fix. And Google most recently is starting a new program that helps schools fix Chromebooks and actually allow students to learn from those repair experiences. So a little bit of movement ahead of potential policy change. So I will turn it over to Nandita to tell you about that side of things. And there is your slide, Nandita, take it away.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Nandita Sampath. I'm a policy analyst at Consumer Reports. I lead advocacy for artificial intelligence issues, and as of a few months ago, also right to repair issues. So I'm still pretty new to this space, but it's a really exciting place to be because there's a lot happening, especially at the state levels, to pass relevant legislation that will help consumers. And so I wanted to briefly discuss like the legislative landscape surrounding right to repair for digital electronics and particularly smartphones. I'll be building on a few things that both Kaveh and Katie mentioned earlier, and I hope that I think after this we'll have some time for questions. I only have one slide, so this will be pretty quick. Thank you for coming up on time soon, but we've had some good progress this year in terms of legislation. In many states, right to repair bills have moved farther along than they have in previous years, but unfortunately, tech lobbying has been a huge barrier to passing these kinds of important legislation. So I'll get into what most of these bills look like. A lot of them are pretty similar. And then I'll discuss tech companies' arguments against right to repair, and I'll try to provide some counterpoints to show you that most of it is like basically nonsense. But we've had some bills this year in several states like California, New York, as Katie mentioned, Massachusetts, and more for right to repair for digital electronics. And we're hoping to see even more states get involved with legislation next year because there was a decent amount of progress this year, and hopefully that will provide some momentum and just like increased awareness for other states that want to get involved in the future. But in general, most of these right to repair bills are fairly similar. They would require the original equipment manufacturers, OEMs of electronic devices such as smartphones, tablets, laptop computers to provide diagnostic and repair information as well as parts to independent repair providers. And so there are several benefits to these bills. One, first, increased competition between independent repair shops will lead to reduced costs for consumers and provide consumers with more choice about where to get their devices fixed. Consumers will no longer have to rely on the original equipment manufacturer to fix their products, which is good because without that sort of competition, the manufacturer can set whatever price they want for product repair. And currently it is sometimes more expensive, as I think my co-panelists have mentioned, to fix your smartphone than just buy a new one. And hopefully that will no longer be the case. And as Kaveh mentioned, this can be a huge burden for people with lower incomes and also Black and minority communities. This legislation would also be good for the environment. Consumers can just replace individual parts in their devices as opposed to throwing out their entire device in favor of buying a completely new one. And so I wanted to talk about some of the legislative progress that has happened this year, at the, especially at the state level, and then I'll go a little bit into the federal level. And so, as Katie mentioned, it's kind of exciting. The New York State Legislature passed a right to repair bill for digital electronics. We're still waiting for the governor's signature to pass it into law. We're hoping this happens soon. We at Consumer Reports have been advocating for the governor to sign this, but there is a lot of tech company opposition to this bill, and I'll get into some of their arguments later. Sadly, most of the other right to repair bills this year have died in their respective legislatures, but we think that with kind of the increased awareness, they'll move farther next year, and we're excited to see what happens. And as a side note, earlier this year, while not a consumer electronic right to repair law, Colorado did pass a wheelchair right to repair bill that would require wheelchair manufacturers to provide parts to repair shops, which is a huge step forward for kind of increasing autonomy and safety for people who use wheelchairs, because formerly they were often stuck for months just waiting for parts to come in. And so you know, that's obviously going to lead to major safety issues for people who use wheelchairs. And so we hope that this law and kind of the other kind of advances that have happened this year in state legislatures, that's a precedent for next year and kind of just provides more momentum, especially for other sectors like digital electronics. And then at the federal level, there are federal bills like the Fair Repair Act, the Freedom to Repair Act, which do similar things to the state bills that I mentioned previously. There are other right to repair bills focused on different sectors like agriculture, which would require, you know, the right to repair for agricultural equipment. And then again, we just hope that kind of this renewed interest in right to repair in a variety of sectors just provides momentum for all of what we've been talking about, including smartphones. And so, you know, we're really excited about the progress, but a lot of the kind of hindrances to this this progress is being limited by tech companies who have a few arguments that don't really make sense to people who kind of understand these issues well, but I'll just go into what they've been saying. And so they argue that the right to repair for electronic devices could lead to safety and security risks for consumers and compel the disclosure of proprietary information. These claims are not true, and I will go into why. So in terms of the security issue, first, replacement parts are provided by the original equipment manufacturer, and so replacing parts in a device with authorized parts and providing repair manuals should not make less secure an already secure device. I think that's just kind of like a specious argument that these companies are kind of bringing up pretty regularly. Furthermore, when consumers are able to repair their products cheaply and efficiently, they are more likely to do it as soon as something goes wrong. And so this can incentivize consumers to keep their products up to date by replacing failing parts and updating buggy software, as opposed to using black market firmware when they kind of need to in a crunch or in like an emergency that could lead to security breaches. Consumers also argue that there are increased safety risks for consumers when they choose to repair products themselves. Katie brought up this report from the FTC called Nixing the Fix, and that report says that with appropriate parts, repair information, and training, consumers and independent repair shops are fully capable of safely repairing electronic devices, and there's no evidence that it's more dangerous for them to do that than compared to like a branded repair. And furthermore, manufacturers' current restrictions on repair information, parts, and tools themselves create safety risks because consumers may try to fix their devices themselves without access to appropriate parts or training. And so from the report as well, by not making parts and manuals available to individuals and independent repair shops and not including information in these manuals about the dangers of particular repairs, manufacturers may be exacerbating the very safety concerns they have raised. And so like, that's just another reason why tech company arguments are not holding up. And so lastly, other opponents of right to repair claim that right to repair would mandate the disclosure of protected proprietary information. This is false because most bills are carefully crafted to avoid any conflicts of protected intellectual property rights. And according to the Repair Association, intellectual property is not altered or pirated in the course of repair. Licensed software products or media backup can only be restored after repairs are complete. And so the right to repair does not and cannot alter federal IP law. And so overall, most of the arguments we've seen from tech companies are quite deceptive. We believe right to repair laws will only be a net positive for consumers by lowering costs, being better for the environment, and ultimately providing consumers with more autonomy and choice over fixing the things they own. And I think that's it from us. So I'm happy to kind of give control back to Linda, and thanks for listening.
Great. Kaveh Waddell, Nandita Sampath, and Kathleen Daffan, thank you so much for your outstanding and informative presentations. Now, are you ready for a few questions? If so, let me turn it over to Nelson Santiago because I know he has a ton of questions for you. Nelson.
Yes. Yes, first of all, a lot of comments about how wonderful the presenters have been, so thank you for that. And first question here for Nandita, let's get this one right now since you just finished speaking. How can we follow the right to repair legislations and updates? Can we participate in any way?
That's a good question. There are a few groups that are kind of heading the advocacy in these spaces. So Purge, P-I-R-G, is a group that's doing a lot. And I think there's a website called, I'll follow up with you all after and provide some links. Is that okay?
That's perfect.
Great, thank you. And then another question then, and any one of the panelists is welcome to chime in. You're welcome to both respond, all three respond. Somebody asking, how many replacements can you get? If you buy a new phone and then it breaks down and then they send you a replacement and then that also has a problem, how many times can you keep getting another phone? Does it depend on whether it's the original warranty or one of the extended warranties? And will it be a refurbished one or not every time? Any thoughts on that?
Thank you. I can take the first crack at that. This is Katie. It does depend, exactly as you're foreshadowing there. It depends on exactly what are the terms of the agreement that's covering the situation. If it's a manufacturer's warranty and each of the times the phone breaks, it's due to a manufacturer's defect, then really I doubt that the warranty limits, the number of times. But a lot of them do provide for giving you a refurbished phone rather than a brand new phone. But this is where I was saying that the devil's in the details, because with any kind of extended warranty or service contract or phone insurance, the answer to that will depend on exactly what's written in the terms of that agreement.
Excellent, thank you. And Katie, you mentioned the chargeback. Somebody says that their credit card company says they don't do chargebacks. Is that something that they can complain to a federal agency about?
Yes, chargebacks are governed by that law I mentioned in the slides, and there are time periods for them. So, sometimes it's like 6 months, and sometimes there are limits on what kinds of issues can go wrong. And, so there can be requirements such as before you file a chargeback, you need to try to work it out with the person you made the purchase from. But, there are limits like that, but I do not think it makes sense that a company just does not do chargebacks at all. That's my initial response. And you could consider, if you're having a problem with your provider, filing a complaint either with the Federal Trade Commission or with the CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
Great, thank you. We have somebody here says that they have, it seems that it's one of the Lifeline phones that's issued by the government. They've already received 2 cell phones that were broken. The sound on both phones was cutting in and out, and no one could hear them. And they were dealing with the Assurance Wireless, they say, I guess that's the extended warranty, and they claimed, oh no, the Assurance Wireless didn't say that. They said that the phones were purchased from the government overseas, and they just can't get a phone that works. Any thoughts around that? Who to complain to? FCC, FTC?
This is Katie, just an initial thought, and then maybe others can chime in too. I don't think it hurts to complain to multiple places. If you're having a real consumer problem, I often will recommend that people complain to a BBB, which can sometimes help get individual disputes resolved, and the FTC. If it's a financial issue, you should go ahead and complain to the CFPB as well. And if there's an issue related to telephones, I would also complain with the FCC. If you have the time, it doesn't hurt to try that approach.
Great, thank you. The other issue somebody raised here is that the warranty terms being so small. Is anyone addressing this, unreadable warranties? Maybe because they're so small, maybe because they're not in plain English things, or maybe they're not in other languages. Is there anything around around readability and being able to understand the warranties?
Yes, that is something that you could file a complaint with at FTC, at reportfraud.ftc.gov. Because under the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act, if a manufacturer does provide a warranty, then the terms of it should be clearly disclosed in a single document. And so if you feel that the terms are just not clear, that's something you could report to the Federal Trade Commission. I will say if you're having a problem with the font size, it's worth checking with the company. Many of them do make their warranties available online these days. And so maybe that would be a way to be able to see a version that you could blow up to a larger font size.
Great, thank you. Another issue someone's raising here, and I guess people are starting to run into this, where the phones are now supposedly obsolete and no longer supported, the companies will say. Is there anything around this? I don't know, is this a legislative matter where how long phones are supposed to be supported or anything around that? Or is it just a good argument for why you should be able to go to a local repair shop?
I want to let Kaveh and Nandita get a word in edgewise, but this is Katie, and I will just say that it's a tricky issue. I mean, in an ideal world, a company would give information about both repairability and how long they're going to support a given product with updates and needed changes at the outset so that consumers can shop reliably for what they want. It's not something that I'm aware of a federal statute that requires that, but you know, under our law, perhaps you could make an argument that there's a situation of unfairness if a company is really hiding needed information about when its products will no longer be usable. But let me turn it over to Kaveh and Nandita to see if they would add anything.
I would just add that, legal questions aside, this might be something that would indeed be helped along by making parts and manuals and tools available to independent repair shops, so that even if a manufacturer decides it's no longer going to support, you know, a 4-year-old, 5-year-old phone, it can be up to your local repair shop to continue doing fixes on those, and they would have the materials that they would need to do so.
Great, thank you. And a couple of people also chimed in about that issue about running into where they just cannot get a hold of the tools, or they're just being told that only specialized tools can be used. Is what can they expect around this, and when in terms of a solution? Do you know?
Just briefly, I think that's kind of the main issue that these bills are trying to solve, because like if you think about the iPhone, there are like special screwdrivers that you need to open the case, and so like those sorts of parts would be required to be provided to independent repair shops and consumers if they do get passed, which is why like the policy landscape is so important right now.
Thank you. And then let's see. One of the arguments that companies have made for not allowing local repairs is somehow a violation of copyright law. Do you know anything about that? Has that been resolved?
I can answer that a little bit and then hand it over. Yes, some companies do make various copyright and intellectual property related arguments about the difficulty, they say, of allowing others to repair their products. The argument might, for example, go that they use this secretive proprietary software, and that in order to allow repairs to be made, they would need to open up that software to lots of other people. And so this is one of the things that the FTC explained and then tried to address and basically understand in the Nixing the Fix report.
Thank you. Anything else? No. Lynn, someone just asking this, what about, and maybe this is what we've been talking about, just lemon law, just is there sort of say a presumption of a defect, lemon laws for phones? You know, if they try to fix it 3 times and they can't, do you then automatically get a free phone, or is that anything at the federal level, or is that maybe a state right if it's available somewhere?
I think you're right to point towards state law with that kind of an analogy. Yes, it's an interesting question, but I think it would be more a matter of state law. At the state level, there are all kinds of different issues about whether there's some kind of implied warranty that a product will function when you buy it, and that can get pretty complex at the state level. So it's not directly on point with lemon laws, but I think that might be the place to start.
Excellent. Well, being that we are up on time, if we get additional questions, we can try to get them to our speakers, and everyone will get the slide deck tomorrow, and there is at least some contact information in there as well. So I'll turn it over back to you, Linda. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson, Kaveh, Nandita, Katie. Thank you again for hanging in there, answering the questions, for your outstanding presentations. You're the best. Audience, join me in sending our guest speakers some love. Thanking them for the great presentations. Again, I want to thank our sponsor. This webinar is presented with a grant from the Rose Foundation for Communities and the Environment. Also, if you want to, also, as I stated earlier, the webinar is being recorded, and you should receive a link to the recording no later than tomorrow afternoon. When you receive the link, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's free and it would help us continue bringing these great webinars. But first, let me tell you a little bit about a couple of events that we have coming up. Consumer Action is proud to co-sponsor Consumer Advocacy Week, which will be held September the 19th through the 23rd. This year, we will focus on payment fraud, ensuring that consumers are protected from fraud, scams, and errors that occur in person-to-person payment. We're going to focus on overdraft and non-sufficient fund fee, and in restoring the FTC's ability to refund victims, fraud victims, and hold scammers accountable. So a lot of states you haven't registered yet. Arkansas, we want the states register now for our Consumer Advocacy Week. On September the 20th, we are hosting a APC webinar that was going to focus on rural and tribal issues and how community-based organizations can qualify for an upcoming grant to take information about the ACP into their communities. And again, on November the 16th, we're celebrating our 51st anniversary. So come on now, we need you to sign up for that. Again, a special thanks to our excellent speakers. Please join me in sending them the love. And let's do this again. Let's do this again on September the 20th. Let's meet here again on September the 20th at 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific time. You are the best audience. Thank you so much for attending today. I look forward to welcome you back on September the 20th. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye now.